Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so let me share this screen with you guys. All right. So you can read along with me the invocation to Sage Patanjali. You can sing along or just listen it. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankha Chakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim. Last words are Pranamami Patanjalim. I bow down to Patanjali. Let's move on to our where we were. So remember we started talking about the 5 different vrittis. Does anybody remember the 5 vrittis? English, Sanskrit, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right knowledge, wrong knowledge.
Right.
One is deep sleep. I forgot.
Smriti. Smriti.
Smriti, yes.
Yeah, memory.
And Vikalpa.
Vikalpa, very good. Yeah, very good.
What is Vikalpa?
Vikalpa is imagination. We talked about it yesterday, I believe, isn't it? All right, let me just see where we were yesterday. So we said Pratyaksha Anumana Agamaha Pramanani. And, oh, we did Viparyaya. We did the wrong knowledge yesterday, misconception, right? And the next number is number 9 in chapter 1. We're on chapter 1. This is Vikalpa, all right? We're getting there today. So remember the 5 vrittis are pramana, that's number 1. Pramana is right knowledge. Okay, and there were 3 aspects of pramana. Anybody remember the 3 aspects of pramana? How are the three different means of getting the right knowledge? Anybody?
Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama.
Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama. Very nice. Pratyaksha is direct perception through the 5 senses predominantly. That's pratyaksha knowledge. And Anumana is inference based on knowledge that we already have acquired in the past. Okay? Then you can infer based on what you already have in your memory bank. All right. So like I said, if you hear steps based on your previous understanding, you can imagine, these steps are of a human being or an animal or bird or whatever. It's just a quick example. So Pratyaksha is the direct perception, Anumana is the inference, and Agamaha is the testimony which is based on some ancient either texts, ancient scriptures, because they are supposedly they contain the wisdom that was kind of revealed to these yogis in their deep states of meditation. That's the truth. That's why we say that these ancient texts, they contain the ultimate truth of life. All right. So that's why we believe them. We trust in them. That's called agama. Or even a teacher. Even today, for example, if you trust a teacher, then you go with that word and then you treat that as the right knowledge. Okay? That was the pramana. Pramana is right knowledge, correct cognition. Then we had viparyaya. We talked about that yesterday, which is wrong knowledge. The most common example of wrong knowledge is a snake in a rope. You see something on the road and you think it's a snake, wherever when the light is thrown on that, turned out to be only a rope. Same thing, we identify ourselves with our mind, body. That's viparyaya, because that's all ignorance, right? That's wrong knowledge. What's the right knowledge? I'm not this body. I'm not this body. I'm not this mind. I'm not this intellect. My identity is my true consciousness, pure awareness. That's what I am. But I don't know this because I am messed up because of the ego. You can put it that way, I'm messed up. So that was viparyaya. Okay. So that was the second one. The third is vikalpa. Vikalpa is, fantasy, imagination, just coming up with ideas which have no real base. That's vikalpa. Then there is nidra is number 4, and we're going to come to all these. Nidra is sleep, deep sleep, as I mentioned, and then smriti is the memory part. Okay. And so let's read up the sutra number 9 now. We're on Vikalpa.
Subhashji, a quick question. Can you also one more time tell what's the meaning of vritti?
Vritti is something that happens in the mind. So a quick example will be, you're hearing my sound at this point, right? And whatever you're hearing is getting into your sense perceptions. Through your hearing mechanism, you're able to hear that sound. All right. But then, because in your memory you also have an image of my voice, so you know that this sound is coming from Subhash. You also know that based on previous understanding that we're talking about of Yoga Sutras. Okay, so that's an impression that's immediately getting into your mind at that time. What is the image in your mind? That we are discussing Yoga Sutras, we are talking about, some concepts here. The sound is coming from Subhash, and it's on, that created image in the mind, that's vritti at that time. And it keeps shifting. Every moment there's a new vritti, right? So that's a vritti. What's happening in the mind, okay? It's the shifting content of the mind every moment, from moment to moment. That's every moment is a vritti.
Subhashji, just to further clarify, so would it be accurate to say that vrittis over a period of time create impressions or sanskaras?
Every vritti creates an impression, not over a time. It's impressions are getting created every moment. Okay. Yes, they become eventually samskaras, because you're already creating those samskaras as we go along. That's a good point. We keep doing this all the time. The content of the mind. There another word that Patanjali uses for the content of the mind at a given time is pratyaya, and we'll come to that. Pratyaya is the actual content, but because it is shifting, it's called a vritti also. All right. So every pratyaya is a vritti because it is shifting. Vritti is everything that is shifting, as changing moment to moment, And every vritti is going to create a subtle impression in the mind. Every vritti. So there is a huge, unbelievable amount of storage in our storage house. But most of it is kind of deep into our deep subconscious levels. And only when there is certain trigger that happens, some stuff can come out of the memory. Does that make sense? Any other doubts or questions about this? All right. So, like I said, I would like this kind of a dialogue because this gives me an idea that, things are, that you are trying to understand things at a deeper level or at the correct level. All right. This is very important. There was earlier in the morning before we started the class, Linda was asking this question, how many sutras do I have in mind that I want to cover for this course? I mentioned in my email that I plan to cover the entire chapter 1 and chapter 2 and maybe a few from chapter 3. Will we get there? I have no clue. Let me know what you guys think. My idea is that whatever we discuss at a level that we can that can give us an understanding of what's going on. So for me, it is more important to understand what we are discussing rather than keeping account, how many sutras have you done and all that. Does that make sense to everyone? I'd like to get your feedback.
It makes sense, Subhashji. And if everybody likes it, we can have another 14 days with you to cover the remaining ones.
That's good. We'll talk about that. Very good. That's my feeling. Let's understand these things because these are not easy concepts. Some of these are, very deep concepts, and I'm also, I'm learning as we go along. I'm also struggling sometimes to understand these concepts. So what I'm presenting to you is my best understanding. Whether it is correct, I don't know. I have no idea to find out what Patanjali had in mind. When I read these commentaries, many commentators, they differ in their views. Their understanding is also based on their samskaras. My understanding is based on my samskaras. So if I'm sharing something which is not accurate, that's the way it is. That's just my best understanding. All right, so let's go on. So we're starting with Vikalpa today. Let me read the Sanskrit phrase. Shabda jnananupati vastu shunyaha kalpaha. One more time. Shabda jnananupati vastu shunyaha vikalpaha. That's the phrase. So what are these words mean now? The meaning, the translation given is the fantasy, imaginary cognition, empty of substance, is caused by words and concepts. Okay, so the words are Shabda Jnana, which is knowledge based on the sound of a word or a word itself. Okay, so that knowledge or that cognition which follows, anupati means it follows that word, anupati, okay? It follows that word or the knowledge that we have in our mind based on that word, but it is vastu shunya. Shunya means empty. Shunya means nothing. Shunya means zero, basically, nothingness. There is no object. Vastu is an object. There is no object associated with it. We hear a sound, we hear a word, and then we create some imaginary concept about that word. That's Vikalpa. Vikalpa means imagination, fantasy. All right. So if you read the notes, we'll understand what that might mean. So it's not a result of right knowledge. It's not a result of inference. Okay, but it's only driven by words which don't have an actual object associated with it. Pick an example. Time. If I say time, what does that mean? Time is a concept, right? It's not an object, but it creates an imaginary idea of what time is. Time is a concept which has been created for us, right? It's not a real thing. It's a mental concept. We need that concept because we want to live in life. But it's really the concept. Same thing, there was another example given in by these commentators. Vyasa, for example, he says, consciousness is the form and nature of Purusha. Okay, we talked about Purusha, and we talked about it, what it is. And if you see, excuse me, excuse me a second. Oh, this is an imagination because in reality, Purusha is consciousness. There are no separate things. It's not accurate to say Purusha has consciousness. No, that's not true. All right. Purusha is consciousness. But sometimes we don't understand that, and then we create that imagination. Oh, maybe there is some entity called Purusha, and it has a quality called consciousness or property or something like that, or an attribute. But that's not true. We have another concept. I'm just giving simple examples. Sun rises and sets. It's just our imagination. Sun is not rising or setting. It's there all the time. The movements that make it look like that. With any abstract noun, let's say love, jealousy. You hear these words and it creates an imagination in your mind, what it might be. There's no object associated with it. They're just abstract nouns, right? But they create an image, and everybody, based on their samskaras, based on their knowledge that they already have related to that word, they'll create an image of that word in a different way. Everyone is different. So that's Vikalpa, basically. It's not based on direct cognition or inference. Just something that you can imagine. All right? Imagination or fancy, as they call it. All right. We move on to the next vritti called Nidra. Nidra is deep sleep. Remember, we talked about deep sleep. There are 3 states: waking state, dream state, and deep sleep. This Nidra refers to deep sleep. So let's read the Sanskrit phrase first. Abhava pratyaya alambana vrittihi nidra. So the first words are abhava pratyaya alambana, and then vritti and nidra. Those are the 5 words in this sutra. So the translation given is sleep is the modification engendered by the absence of mental concepts. Now, let's try to understand these words as we read we try to understand the words individually and then see what they mean. Okay. Remember, I mentioned the word pratyaya. It's an important word. You should keep that in mind. Pratyaya. Pratyaya means the content or whatever happens to be in the mind at a given moment. Pratyaya. Okay. So abhava means absence. Abhava means something is not there, that it's abhava. Alambana means support. Okay. So the image created in the mind, which is based on nothingness, basically. There's no content in the mind. So it's a kind of an oxymoron, right? It's saying the impression, vritti, caused in the mind when there is no content in the mind. Okay, that's called nidra, right? So
Shivaji, is that emptiness also causing a modification to the mind?
okay, so let's read the notes. Good question. All right. Now,
Before
This is
that,
all-
Subhash,
Vashi, the
before that, in the Sanskrit version,
Yeah,
an English version, it is a tamo.
What's that?
English.
You see the Sanskrit version and the English version, there's a word missing, tamo.
Oh, you're right. You know,
The tamo is not there actually.
Tamo is not there. This is from,
Tamo is not there.
it's something that I picked up from some other source, maybe. Yeah, you're right. Good observation. Okay. Oops, what happened? Uh-oh.
Going back.
No, I just wanted to edit it right there so that I don't have to, otherwise I'll forget.
I was thinking maybe, the Nidra is tamo guna anyway, so I thought
No, that's the case. I mean, I'm coming to that. But there's no, that tamo word is not there in most texts. It may be there in some texts, sometimes these things happen. Some texts,
That's true. Thank you.
but I'm glad you brought it up. All right. Okay. So this is a bhava pratyaya lambana vrittihi nidra. All right. Now, it's dominated by the guna tamas. That we know that. Nidra is always dominated by tamas. That's how we sleep. We need that tamas because we want to sleep and rest. Now, the answer to that question is, even though there is no content in the mind, but then it says that sleep is a vritti because you can look back and say, I slept well. And if you slept well, then tamas was slightly mixed with sattva. I did not sleep well. Maybe it was mixed with rajas. I slept very heavily. I'm kind of tired even after, sleep. Then it's all tamas. Then you come up, still feeling tired. Now, at that time, no other vrittis are present during sleep time. All right. During deep sleep, nothing is happening. Dream, we talked about that. Dream and waking state are not included in this because dream can be thought of as a vikalpa because it's a vikalpa based on prior content in the mind. We have all these subliminal impressions in the mind, and just exposing those images, we create our own dream world, but that's all imagination. So dream can be considered as vikalpa. Okay. So, deep sleep does leave an impression in the mind. That's why it's a vritti. Okay. Even though there's no content at that time. These things, sometimes they're hard to understand. For me, it took a while to even grapple with this whole idea. Now, when we talk about these three states of dream and waking and deep sleep, there's an Upanishad called the Maandukya Upanishad. Okay. And there it talks about the Om sound, the letters of the Om sound, which is A, U, and M. And it talks about A, U, and M representing waking, dream, and deep sleep states, respectively. Okay. This is just a kind of a side note. You may want to explore at some other time. The only thing that's active during deep sleep is consciousness. If there's no consciousness, we don't even exist. So we need that consciousness because it's that consciousness only, which, even in the deepest of deep sleep, if somebody were to prick a needle into your skin, you might still wake up, jump up. Okay? So you need that consciousness. That's deep sleep. Okay. So let's move on to the final vritti, which is called smriti. Smriti is, like I mentioned, memory. Okay. So the Sanskrit phrase is Anubhuta Vishaya Asampramoshaha Smriti. Anubhuta Vishaya Asampramoshaha Smriti. That's the Sanskrit phrase. The English translation that I have is memory is not letting go of an object or image of subjective experience. Basically, anubhut means experienced. Anything that is experienced, it's called anubhuta. Okay, anubhava is experience. Anubhuta is what has been experienced already. Okay, Vishaya is the subject. So whatever you have experienced, anything that you have experienced. Asampramosha. Okay, it's a long word and has several prefixes. Comes from mush. Mush actually means to steal or lose something. But when you combine the whole word, it basically means not letting go of something. Okay, basically it's holding on to something, not letting go, not losing it, basically. Okay, so what are we talking about? Everything that we have experienced, every subject, Vishaya is anything, any object, subject that we experienced, and then keeping it without losing it. That's smriti, that's memory. Basically, like I mentioned, every experience that we have gets stored in the memory. Okay, and that's what is called the memory. All right, let's read my notes here. And these are the results of all 5 vrittis. Memories are caused by everything. Whether you have right knowledge, wrong knowledge, everything is going to cause a memory in the mind. And of course, like every other vritti, memory may also result in pleasure or pain, right? We said vrittis are klishta or aklishta. Those 2 words are, something that you keep in mind. Klishta means caused by klesha, which can cause some suffering. Aklishta means which are not caused by klesha, and they may not cause any painful experience. Same thing happens with memories. You bring something out that you did 20 years ago, and you're miserable because that's a klishta. Something said something to you, and you start wondering, oh my God, I should have done that. I should have done this. And things happen in the mind. All right.
So Subhashi, is it the replaying of the experience that is causing us furthermore modification to the mind?
Yes, absolutely. We're all the time doing it, right? We're replaying our past memories and then causing more damage to ourselves all the time. We're very good at it, actually. We're experts at that. Right? So this cognition creates impressions which manifest as memory in the mind. That's what we've been talking about all the time. And intelligence, this buddhi records the process and instrument of cognition. For example, a sound or a sight, but the memory, is the actual words or phrases or objects, that were actually representing those sounds or sight. That's in the memory, right? So if I hear a sound, let's say hear a bird, the intelligent buddhi will record that sound, right? Understand that it's sound, but then it makes a cognition that this sound represents this bird or this animal or this human being or this person, etc. All that gets stored in the memory. All right. So these are the 5 vrittis. Remember, pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smriti. 5 vrittis. Pramana is right knowledge. Viparyaya is wrong knowledge. Vikalpa is imaginary knowledge. Nidra is deep sleep. And smriti is memory. All right. So keep this in mind, because you'll be, thinking about these things later on also. 5 vrittis. So remember, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That's the very definition of yoga. Yoga, by definition, is the ability to stop these 5 kinds of vrittis, basically, or they don't create a mess in the mind. Best way.
I mean, it almost
Subhashi,
seems impossible, Subhashi.
Yes, it is. It's very, very difficult.
And Subhashji, this actually confuses me all the time.
Uh-huh.
Like, why do we want to stop right knowledge, or why do we want to stop sleep? I can understand wrong knowledge and imagination, but
Yes,
why do we want to stop it?
Stop in the sense that when we are in the deep state of meditation, we don't want anything to disturb us. That's the whole idea. It's all talking about going into a state of meditation which is very, very deep. At that time, whether it's right knowledge or wrong knowledge, it's going to disturb you, your mind. You don't want any distraction.
Yes.
So in the deepest state of meditation, you want a clean slate completely. When we come out of meditation, of course you want right knowledge. Of course you want to sleep. But you don't want those impressions to bother you during meditation. That's the idea, because we eventually want to get to a state which is completely free of all content in the mind. It's called nirbija samadhi. That's what Patanjali calls it. Nirbija. No seed of any kind, of any vritti. But when we come out of samadhi, when we come out of, and when we want to live our daily life, fine, perfect, yeah, absolutely. But at that time, our mind has already been cleansed out. It has been purified. So our functioning, our day-to-day activities will be much more meaningful, much more pleasant, less negativity, and all that will happen. Okay? Yes, you're right. We need the correct cognition. We need sleep. We need memory. We need everything. What we don't need is the garbage coming out of the mind. But during deep states of meditation, none of this is required. We don't need anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's a tool to get into samadhi.
Absolutely. Perfect. You got it. Okay. 5 vrittis. All right. Where do we move from here? Okay, number 12 now, sutra number 12. Let's read what it is. Oh, I don't like this transliteration. Anyway, I'll change it later. So let's read the sutra. So the words are Abhyas Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. Okay, so that's the sentence in Sanskrit. Abhyas Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. Okay, so the English translation that I have, most of these translations that I have made some minor modifications to some of them, but most of it is from the translation by Swami Satchidananda. Okay, so I decided to just pick his translation and put it here. But then as I go along, there are places where I don't like his translation in some sense. So I've made some modifications. Okay. So the translation is: the restraint of these mental modifications comes through assiduous practice, abhyasa, and dispassionate detachment, vairagya. Okay? So these are the two terms that we now have to become very, very comfortable with, very familiar and very comfortable with. Abhyasa and vairagya. Okay? They'll come up later also. So the words are abhyasa, which is practice, vairagya, which is non-attachment or detachment or dispassionate detachment as it's called here. Okay, so using those, so through these two, when we add this word, it becomes abhyas vairagya bhyam. Through these two, by using these two techniques of abhyas and vairagya, what happens? Tan nirodha. Tan means, it comes from tat. Tat means that. That referring to what? Vrittis. Remember, we've talked about these 5 vrittis so far. So always go back and refer to those vrittis. Nirodha means again cessation. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Keep that in mind. So vritti nirodha can be attained. Tan means vritti here. Okay, so you can replace tat with vritti. So the vritti nirodha, which we talked about in sutra number 2, can be attained by abhyasa and vairagya. That's the meaning of this Sanskrit phrase. All right. All right. Let's read my notes if I have any. All right.
So sometimes I feel like it is you are completely withdrawing from this world. Does that mean that we are withdrawing from all types of action or something like that?
No. Dispassion, we'll come to that maybe, when we talk about what that means really. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Let's come to that vairagya. All right.
Okay.
Get a little better understanding of what that means. Okay, so why did I have these notes now? It says a flooded river can devastate villages or irrigate fields. Devastation is prevented by building dams, and irrigation is controlled by digging canals, etc. Why am I reading all this? Similarly, the river of the mind. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. A river of the mind flows upon the ground of the sense objects toward the ocean of cycles of birth and death, which can be broken through dispassion. All right, that's why we are talking about these concepts now. All right, rivers, they can either flow toward the sense objects or they can flow toward the liberation area. Okay, so it's how we kind of control the flow of this river, so to say. Okay, and to prevent devastation, you can build a dam or canals, etc. All right, otherwise they will devastate your area. It's the same thing. You are flooded by these sense objects. Okay, the objects which are attractive to our five senses. We are flooded by the input from those and desire for these objects. Okay, but if we are focused only in that direction, our river of the mind is only in that direction, it's going to lead us to this continuous cycle of birth, death, rebirth. It never is broken. What can break it? If we can detach ourselves from the attraction towards these sense objects. That's what detachment means. Detachment, vairagya, is to be able to detach yourself from attraction toward these five senses. What does that mean? I always like to say, food is something, we all enjoy food, right? What does that mean? Do we not enjoy food? In my case, I love mangoes, for example, right? Do I not enjoy a mango? The point here is, Patanjali is not saying you should not enjoy it. In fact, there is another statement somewhere that you should enjoy it. You should enjoy life, okay? But attachment means you're attached to it now. That means if I don't get a mango, right, I'll be miserable. If you are attached to a cup of coffee at 7 a.m., you don't get it, you get a headache, or you just feel miserable. That's attachment. So the idea is to not get attached, and yet when it's available, enjoy it, have fun, enjoy everything. So it's not against enjoyment. It's not becoming miserable when you don't get your desired object. That's the way I look at it. Okay? You have other thoughts?
Subhashji, one definition that I like the most about dispassion, because that helps me all the time, is that it's not about not owning things, it's about don't let those things own you.
Exactly. Very
Don't
beautiful.
let them drive you crazy.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's what we said, that if the mango owns me, then I'm miserable. But if I own the mango, I'm fine. I'm enjoying it.
I think it makes me think of just the idea of being present. So
Mhm.
if you're eating the mango, enjoy the mango, but don't be worried that you might not ever have another mango or that it's going to be over. Kind of like that practice of presence.
Absolutely. That's right. You're right. Present moment, Enjoy the present, be in the present, and don't worry about what might happen. If you don't get a mango in future, that's fine. Do something else. Okay. So that's Vairagya, the detachment from these predominantly. I mean, we're going to come to more detailed definition of Vairagya, but this is just a preliminary statement we're making, that detach yourself from any attraction to the five sense objects. Okay. And then what is Abhyasa? Well, I mean, again, minds flow toward the joy of liberation. It can be increased through constant practice. And we'll talk about that now. All right. So, what I think it was Prabhu who was saying this, that it's very hard to calm the mind. This is exactly, I picked up this quote only for that reason from Bhagavad Gita. Okay. It's in chapter 6, verses 35 and 36 in chapter 6. Okay, Bhagavad Gita. Read this. You will understand exactly what he's saying. It is true that the mind is restless and very, very difficult to control. But it can be conquered, hey Arjuna, because this is Krishna talking to Arjuna, through regular practice. Again, in Gita also, the same word is used, abhyasa, and detachment, vairagya. Gita also uses the same two words. Those who lack self-control will find it difficult to progress in meditation. But those who are self-controlled, striving earnestly through the right means, will attain their goal. Okay, so nobody says it's easy. Patanjali doesn't say it's easy. Bhagavad Gita doesn't say it's easy. The Upanishads say it's not easy. But hey, if you don't make a start, you'll never get there. So we have to make a start.
Yeah. Actually, understanding these vrittis is very important, I believe, Subhashi. I never thought about these vrittis. Even though I know about the detachment, abhyasa, but knowing about the vrittis, what causes these modifications. Sometimes when we are doing a lot of work, we can't stop the mind. It keeps on going on and on.
Absolutely.
Can't sleep.
Yep.
Subhashi, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Giri.
Subhashi, is Bhagavad Gita based on yoga or yoga is based on Bhagavad Gita?
No. Bhagavad Gita is based on what it contains is more on the essence of the Upanishads. Okay.
Okay.
And that's what Bhagavad Gita is. Of course, a lot of things have been added in addition to what the Upanishads told us. Okay, but Gita, that's what they say. Upanishado Gavo and all that. There's a whole statement there that Gita is essentially is the kind of an essence of the Upanishads. But everything comes from the Vedic knowledge. All these 6 darshanas that we talked about, 6 philosophical streams that we talked about in the first class, they all are derived in some way from the Vedic knowledge, from the Upanishadic knowledge. But then these authors, the different authors like Patanjali did the yoga, right? And then Kapila did the Sankhya. All right, these people, they added their own kind of value added, like this is value added content, right? And added more value in specific directions, intended for maybe a specific kind of people. All right, that's what has happened. So yoga is an outgrowth of Sankhya philosophy, and all that is an outgrowth from ancient knowledge which is contained in the Vedas and Upanishads. Okay, Gita specifically focuses more on the Upanishadic knowledge. Okay, and yoga kind of expands on the Sankhya knowledge. But they have a lot in common because everything, goes back to the same source. So there's a lot of commonality between yoga, Bhagavad Gita, and my recommendation always is to at least, when we study, if you are a yoga practitioner, we should definitely make every effort to become familiar with both Yoga Sutras as well as Bhagavad Gita. It will make a lot of sense. And they will really, these two texts will really help you mold your lifestyle in a manner that eventually you will start feeling a little more joy in life. And that's what I feel, I believe.
That's true, Subhashji.
Okay, so very good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on. All right, so we talked about Abhyasa and Vairagya. Okay. Now he's just trying to define what Abhyasa is. So the sutra is Tatra Sthitau Yatnaha Abhyasaha. I'm breaking these words. Tatra Sthitau Yatnaha Abhyasaha. So the translation is practice or Abhyasa is the continuous effort to abide in a steady state. This sutra, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense, but basically what it is saying is, Tatra means there. Tatra means, literal meaning is there. Therein means what? In a steady state, in a mind. Remember the word was here, Abhyasa Vairagya Dhyam Tan Nirodha. All right. So when we are trying to attain that Nirodha state, all right, so to be in the Nirodha state and the ability to maintain that state, Tatra Sthitau. Sthitau means to stay in that stability, in that state of Nirodha. The effort, Yatna means the effort, okay? So the effort to stay in that state of stability, that's called Abhyasa. This is the breaking of the Sanskrit words in the individual words, all right? So let's see my notes here. Okay, so stillness that we are talking about is the mind's stillness, is the one-pointedness of the mind when it is without rajasic and tamasic vrittis. Well, this is too strong a statement. It cannot be without rajasic and tamasic. There's never going to be a time that we are going to be completely devoid of rajas and tamas. It's the dominant state. So stillness is one-pointedness of the mind when sattva is dominant and rajas and tamas are subdued. Think of that way, okay? So one who is neither pleased nor displeased. This is exactly what we are talking about. You're not pleased or displeased on receipt of sensory input, which is pleasant or unpleasant. That's calmness, steady state of the mind. Okay? It doesn't still mean that you don't enjoy it, but don't get overjoyed and then, oh my God, I'm so happy, I'm so thrilled. And suddenly, if that goes away, you're again back to miserable state. That's what it means. And in the Gita, this state of the steady state of mind has been called samatva bhava. Some of you might have heard that in Gita they call it samatva. The English translation for the closest translation would be equanimity. Okay, that's the state of mind. And then again, the commentators, they say, it says effort, yatna. Yatna means effort. What does effort mean here? So in some of the commentaries, I read this statement. Effort implies zeal and enthusiasm. Zeal, real vigor, zeal, courage. Okay? So that's effort, courage, enthusiasm, steadfastness, patience, pursuit, or at least the desire to pursue, strong desire to pursue spirituality. And also they say an attitude of service, where you're not all the time receiving stuff, but you're able to give stuff back to the, like they say, give it back to the society, give it back to the community. That attitude of service. So all that is required to call it an effort. And you need all this to maintain that steadiness of the mind. Okay? Again, there's a statement that I picked up from this Upanishad called Maandukya Upanishad. When the wise man exerts himself with energy, knowledge, and renunciation. Renunciation is again that dispassion, that vairagya. So energy, knowledge, and renunciation, his soul reaches the supreme abode. Okay, that's the Upanishadic way of saying things. Supreme abode. Okay. So you really have to exert yourself with energy, knowledge, and renunciation. That's the effort required to attain our ultimate goal. Okay. Next one. Now, these are the attributes of this word called abhyasa. This is a very important sutra. You should memorize this because this really tells us how to apply these concepts in abhyasa. So the sutra is Satu. Oops, I keep clicking on it. Shouldn't be clicking on it. Otherwise, it goes to the next slide. So the words are Satu Dirghakala, that's the first one. Nairantarya, second one. Satkara Sevitaha, third one. Dredabhumihi. So again, I read the whole words, whole sentence. Satu Dirghakala Nairantarya Satkara Sevitaha Dredabhumihi. Okay, now let me read the translation first. This word sa means this. What I'm referring to, practice. This is indeed firmly grounded when it is persistently exercised for a long time, without interruption, and with earnest reverential attention and devotion. It's a very beautiful statement, and you don't apply it only just to meditation, apply it to everything in life. You will really feel that you are doing, yourself some good when you apply these things to everything in life. Okay? So, tu means indeed generally, tu means just indeed. So that indeed is achieved. What are we trying to achieve? Dred bhumi. Dred means firm, very stable, firm. Bhumi is ground. And what are we trying to achieve? A firm ground on which we can stand with fortitude. Okay. And how do you attain that? Dirgha kala. Dirgha means long. Kala means time. Long time. Nairantarya. Antar means a gap. And when you add the prefix nairantarya, nai means it's no gap. It's zero. And no interruption, no gaps. Antar means interruption or gap. Then the word satkara. Satkara means a sense of devotion, a sense of trust, you can call it. Respect, belief. All these words can be used for satkara. Asevitaha means practiced, basically. Asevitaha means enjoyed. Okay. So the whole thing, it means that to stay on firm ground, you have to practice for a long time, dirghakala, without interruption, and with a sense of devotion, a sense of kind of reverential treatment, you can call it. All right. So let's read the notes. So keep this in mind. This is a very beautiful sentence, very important. And like I said, apply to everything in life, whether it's working at home, working in a project at work, apply these concepts. All right. Okay. Now, what is dirgha kala? For a long time. Practice must be sustained for long. And it could mean multiple lifetimes. Wow. That is an important statement here, because just like in Bhagavad Gita, it says it's a very difficult task that we are undertaking. To calm the mind, it's very difficult.
So, Subhaji, I have one question. Like, Does it mean that our mind is getting carried from one life to another life?
Yes, 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 yes. You're right. You're absolutely right. We have this whole bag full of samskaras, as they call it. It's called, Patanjali uses the term karma ashaya. Ashaya means a storehouse. Ashaya means a retainer, like a bag. Karma ashaya means these are the bag full of karmas that we carry with us. So we never start the new life with a clean slate. No, we carry our bag full of karmas, good or bad, and then resume our life from that point on. Okay, so yeah, that's a good thought. So we don't start with a clean slate, and we'll talk about that reincarnation, rebirth, and how that all works out when we get to that topic. Okay, but that's a good thought. Yes. So Patanjali says that you might need several lifetimes, and everyone says that. Gita also says the same thing. Okay, you need multiple lifetimes. Nobody can achieve this in one lifetime. Very few people. Only people like Ramana Maharishi and few other names that come to mind. Otherwise, everyone needs multiple lifetimes. Nairantarya means without interruption. Interruption in practice allows accumulation of negative vrittis. This is very important to remember. If you interrupt your practice, then you're again inflicted by negative vrittis and they negate your earlier gains, So you gain something and then you suddenly stop. Negative vrittis take over and you lose everything. It doesn't make sense. Maintain that practice uninterruptedly. Satkara sevitaha means with faith and reverence. Reverence entails ascetic practices of tapas, control over sexual passion, knowledge, and unflinching faith. So these are some of the words that some of the commentators have used. That means when you do the practice, do it with a sense of reverence, but also do it with that sense of tapas. Tapas means you really applying yourself forcefully into the practice. Control sexual passion. This is quite common. This is brahmacharya. We'll talk about that. And of course, you need knowledge. You need knowledge. Okay, so we'll talk about that. All right. So that's the practice part. Okay. Now we'll talk about Vairagya next time. Okay, it's 7:30. So let's again pause here and again come up with thoughts, ideas, questions, anything that you want to suggest.
So Bhakti, you mentioned about Ramana Maharishi, but yeah, I mean, most people say and you also say this, he's probably been working for many lifetimes. It's a
Exactly.
culmination. Yeah.
That's what they claim. When you have a very strong, background, and you've had many lifetimes with spiritual awakening going on, and then suddenly you take this birth and you're already kind of there. Patanjali talks about that also. Janma, he says Janma is one of the ways you can attain samadhi. That means you're born with that level of spiritual upliftment already there, which has been earned in your previous lifetimes. Yes. Okay.
So Subhasji, this is a bit off, but in Hindu culture, it says that depending on your karmas, you would not necessarily reincarnate into the human life. It could be anything.
Sure.
So that becomes very complicated because depending on what your karmas that you perform in this life, there is no guarantee that whether you're gonna be attaining the human life in your next life. So it's like it's a circle that once you get in, so I kind of agree that you have to do the tapas in order to maintain that
Right.
and make sure that you, even if you want to get liberated, you want to get another human life in order for you to achieve this.
Absolutely, yes. You're absolutely right.
And also, I think having good company also is very essential to achieving
That's the term they use for good company, satsang.
satsang.
In our culture, they call it satsang, which means company of people, who are, looking at things in your own, in the same way as you are looking, and you're all kind of leading in that same direction of spiritual evolution. Satsang, very good. Yes, the whole concept of of this reincarnation, and the chapter 2 is, there's a lot of discussion on reincarnation, and Patanjali uses these three terms, jati, ayu, and bhoga. So same thing. Jati means you will be born in who knows what form. You will be an insect or a bird or an animal, or all these are possible. And ayu is the lifespan, and bhoga is what kind of experiences you will have in that life. So those three things are determined by your karmasha, your bag of karmas. Jati, ayu, bhoga. He talks about that in chapter 2. We'll get there. All right. Any other thoughts?
Subhashi, I just want to say that this is really good. Thank you so much for doing this. This is very good.
Oh wow, that's very kind of you. Well, like I said, I'm doing the best that I understand. I cannot claim to understand everything. In fact, I don't. When we go through our discussion sessions, and I have more questions than I have answers. It's just the way it's just the nature of things here. Patanjali has put together just so much stuff into his 195 sutras. It can take multiple lifetimes just to understand his sutras. So
Yeah, but Subhashi, I've read this and I've read these before. It's very difficult to understand these without a teacher or without a group. So thank you. I'm just so grateful that you are doing it for us.
my pleasure. And I learn much more, by doing this, because every day I have to read up before I come for the class. It's helping me a lot. Okay, so if you are okay, then we'll close the session. So close the eyes, sit up nice, comfortable, tall, relax though. Let's recite Om once now. Take a deep inhalation. So the palms together for our closing Shanti mantra. Inhale. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Dhammaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead me from unreal to the real, darkness to light, from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Peace, peace, peace. Let's rub the palms briskly. Just cup over the eyes. Soft cover, relaxing the eyes. Release the hands. Join the palms again. We'll do Guru Pranam, paying our tribute to the Guru. So raise the arms up And as you exhale, bend forward. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. With deep respect, I bow down to all my teachers, all my gurus, most ancient to the most current. I always like to pay a very special tribute to my teacher, sage Patanjali. Back up. Thank you all very much. Namaste. Have a wonderful rest of the day, rest of the